Hello, Psych 250 students. Are you ready for Chapter 14? Hope that you're all well, hoping that things will get better before they get worse, right? We're going to talk about Chapter 14 today, personality psychopathology. Wow, what a boatload of stuff. Imagine somebody comes up to you and says, you need to change your personality. And you go up to them and say, well, which part? And they say, all of it. I'm sure some of you would get a little defensive, especially being cooped up in the house, be really defensive. But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about aspects of a person's personality that affects all elements of their personality. So much so that they start to have conflicts in their relationship, maybe at work, maybe at school, everywhere. And so you get one person complaining about your personality. That's their opinion. Two people, all right, coincidence. A lot of people, no, in our minds, we might say it's a conspiracy. Everybody else is wrong and we're right. Then you have people that have potentially a personality disorder. Here we have the frog looking, of course, in therapy and looking for their inner tadpole, right? How did I become the way I became? And that kind of gives us a clue as to our personality and how it develops as an individual. So personality is a psychological characteristic. And of course, we know it's not implicitly just the environment that shapes and molds our personality. It's biologically based too. And the traits that we have, and I underline relatively, the reason why I underline that is because there's some new research that says that, you know what, personality seems to vary over time. Originally, we thought that our personality was pretty stable and stayed with us for the rest of our lives. And some of you can point to some of the characteristics of your own personality and think to yourself, well, I've always been this way. I'm just older now. And some of you have said, gosh, I've changed a lot over the years. The research is sort of supporting that our personality, most recent research, seems to change pretty dramatically. Now, when does it become pathological? Because we've all met people that have had some really strong personalities. But I alluded to it a little bit earlier when I mentioned how it starts to cross the line. That's a thing that we've mentioned from day one. When does my disorder cross the line? When did it become an issue? And when you find yourself not being able to compromise, when you find yourself being the person that has to have it this way, or situations have to be this way, with no tolerance for any exception, then we're talking about the potential of a personality disorder. How prevalent is it? It's hard to say because some people never seek help for their personality disorder. If anybody, it's the people they interact with that suffer the consequences, so they seek help. We're talking about 9 to 13% of the population. Believe me, if you've worked with somebody with a very strong personality characteristics, it impacts a lot more people than those 9 to 13%. Everybody around them, right? And unfortunately, some of these folks with personality disorders, which could be us, we're either related to or we work with. They could be even our boss, right? Or even the president. One never knows. So, it's broken up into three categories if we're going to label somebody with a personality disorder. First category is called odd or eccentric, and that's listed under cluster A. The second category deals with more the dramatic, that's under cluster B. And the third category deals with the anxious related disorders. Now, that's under cluster C. Now, is it possible to have more than one? Yes, unfortunately. And it's not like you have an advantage, like I got more disorders than you, right? No, it just complicates the situation a little bit more. All right, let's start with the first one I want to discuss today, and that is dealing with antisocial personality disorder. Now, unfortunately, we have prisons full of antisocial personality disorders. So, what sets them separate from everybody else? One of the characteristics that we see with antisocial personality disorders is they go by their own rules. They don't follow man's rule, so to speak, or woman's rule, whoever makes the rules. They do their own thing. We've recently had some protests in different states, even in the state of California, where people are like, I'm not staying in the house anymore. I'm going to go and congregate and do whatever I want. And I'm not wearing a mask. And I don't believe this COVID-19 stuff. All right. I don't know if we would classify them as antisocial personality disorders. What they're doing is kind of against society. And you hear people often saying, I'm antisocial, right? That doesn't mean they have a personality disorder, but if all elements of their personality is kind of that way, then they're leaning more towards that. Do they not take responsibility for their actions? You see this all the time with antisocial personality disorder, where they're busted of a crime and they blame everybody else, right? I had to kill the lady because she didn't give up her car. It's her fault. Um, it's the World Health Organization's fault about the pandemic. That's why it's killing so many people in the United States. Blame, 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 as opposed to let's do better. That's one thing I've heard the governor of California, Mr. Newsom, say. Let's do better. Let's do better. Right? I accept responsibility. Let's do better. So here's a person who's actually willing to say, hey, the buck stops with me in the state of California, and let's find ways of doing better. I wouldn't classify him as antisocial personality disorder. We find that antisocial personality disorder lack in the ability to plan. So that's why they get themselves into trouble often. Um, what are we talking about? We're talking mostly men. Why would that be the case? Well, think about the cultural issues regarding antisocial personality disorder. We encourage men to be action figures, right? Even the terminology we give, uh, this is a doll for girls, this is an action figure for boys, right? So we want men to be aggressive, assertive, however you want to label it, and they're more likely to be supported. I mean, we have people supporting people who show signs of antisocial personality disorder because they want to root for the anti-hero, so to speak. Good or bad, I'll leave it up to you. We do know that genetics is involved. We see that, as an example, you might think of murderers or serial killers as having aspects of antisocial personality disorder, which in some cases is true. We see that blows to the head, brain damage early on in the individual's history seems to be connected with a number of these individuals. Now, that's not saying that if you've hit your head as a kid, maybe lost consciousness, you suffered um, some kind of brain damage, that you're going to become a serial killer or develop antisocial personality disorder. I'm just saying that there are some basic um, brain differences in these individuals. They're not feeling the apathy or empathy towards other people, right? So in their situations, and we arrest these folks and we're sentencing them in court, they're not going to be the person that's going to break down, start crying, and say, "I'm really sorry. I just was in a bad time in my life, and I should have never done that. I accept all the punishment." No, these people will be blaming other people. They'll be laughing during the sentencing. They just don't have that connectiveness, you know. So if you're a victim of one of these people and saying, "Why are you doing this? Please don't hurt me," they're not going to feel it. They're not going to feel this notion of, "Oh gosh, I shouldn't be doing this. This is wrong. You know, you seem like a nice person. Why am I doing this?" It's not going to be there. We do see that antisocial personality also seem to seek out sensation. So if you score high in sensation seeking, maybe you're one of those individuals that love to go to the new roller coaster, super fast, super dangerous, and you got to be the first one on the ride in the first seat. That doesn't necessarily mean you have antisocial personality disorder, but think about it as these folks that need to have that thrill in their life. So what are they going to do? They're just going to walk into the mall and go up to the jewelry counter and smash the glass and grab whatever they can and run out the door. Not necessarily well planned, but the thrill of it is exciting. And their rationale is, well, this store has a lot of jewelry. I'm sure they can afford it. What do they have insurance for? Right? If somebody gets in their way and they have to hurt that person, then that's that person's fault, right? It's a complicated thing to work with somebody with antisocial personality disorder. I don't want to give the illusion that they can't change, because some people can change, but it's difficult. Going back to that statement I said earlier, if somebody asks you to change your personality and you say, which part? And they say, everything. Imagine that from today, watching this video from this today, your attempts to change every aspect of your personality, how you think, how you react, how you feel, that would be very difficult because we've had a lot of practice being the person that we are right this second, right? So the environment can have a huge impact in determining what kind of personality we have. If we go back to Bandura's modeling, we think of the common expression, monkey see, monkey do. And so get this notion, if with people around us, this is how they solve problems. And it's not always conducive to a better society if you're solving problems through violence, through manipulation, through rationalization. How do we treat antisocial personality disorder? It's complicated. You have to get a lot of people involved. You know, you always hear about it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to change a person. People have to be on board with this. At the very least, the individual has to want to change. And that's not always easy because, again, this idea that I'm right and you're wrong is pretty prominent with antisocial personality disorder. I've worked with a number of people that fell into that category, and they were so tied up with this notion of everybody else is wrong, society is wrong, the rules are wrong, I'm going to do it my way, right? And so when we run into individuals like that, it's very difficult to convince them that there are alternatives in doing it that way. So you have to change the way a person thinks and maybe do some role play with them and have them practice. It's almost like they're playing a role in a play. You know, you're playing a role and you're just somebody else for a little bit. You're not really that person, but you're pretending to be that person. And that's how we get people to start off this process. You have to pretend to be somebody who is a little bit more agreeable, a little bit more into compromise, and willing a little bit more to acknowledge that there are different ways of dealing with situations. And I always find that if you start off with that, holding your tongue, thinking of different ways of responding to things, trying new things, smiling at people when you normally wouldn't smile at them, that if you do that long enough, your pretend becomes reality, right? I know, easier said than done. We're going to continue with this amazing chapter next time.